Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. No, I don't want to show it to you. Guys, we done sorted it out. That flute that came off, look at this. Come on, guys. Look at that. Hey guys, Ryan Gill here with Hunt Primitive, where we entertain, educate, and inspire. And you know, on this channel we work really hard to get you where you want to be in your own primitive building and hunting adventures, and this video is absolutely no exception. We're going to be working really hard on developing some really heavily hinge fluted Clovis projectiles. Now, if you've watched the Clovis documentary that we previously did, and I will drop a link down in the description in case you haven't seen that, we talk specifically at great length in that documentary that these double-sided hinge fluted points are not super common in the archaeological record. They do exist, and there's some beautiful examples, but the vast majority have a good single flute on one side, and then oftentimes have like a two relief flutes and then a one flute up the center, so they're multi-fluted on the other side, and sometimes really not fluted well at all, and that's really common. But we're always trying to push the envelope to see what can we actually accomplish, how can we continue to get better and create those really finely double fluted Clovis points. And so that is our purpose in this video. And one of the other things that's going to make this video very unique is we're not actually going through just the start to finish making one. We're taking a lot of different preforms and we're jumping right ahead and getting into the fluting, and we do a lot of flutes. We flute preforms, redress, flute it again, flute another one, redress it, flute it again, flute it again, flute it again. So we're getting a lot of fluting video and experience in this one. It's not just making one or two points, we're fluting a whole bunch of them, and we're showing really good flutes, and then we're also showing a few failures and then why those points failed. So I think there's really the potential for you to learn a tremendous amount about Clovis and even Folsom or Cumberland fluting in this video. And then the last thing before we get started is, if you just want to watch the fluting and that's it, and you don't want to hear everything else that goes into it, you're probably going to fast forward to about 35-38 minutes from now, and that's when we actually start removing the flutes. But if you do that, you're going to miss some really crucial parts of understanding as to why they're being fluted like this and how the system has really developed to be able to do these flutes, and how it correlates to blade core technology, which is really important to Clovis and other Folsom and Paleo point technologies. So you may not want to skip ahead. It may be worth your time to sit down and actually watch the full video. But again, if you want to skip ahead and just watch the fluting, then go ahead and kick it on out to at about 35-38 minutes or so. Alright guys, I think we're going to have some fun today. As the intro kind of stated, we're going to go through multiple different pieces. We're skipping all the bifacial stuff. So if you're to the point that you're starting to work on fluted points, you're probably past the basics, so this is a really advanced thing. And if you're still looking for the basics on all of that and you still want to do Clovis, I would highly recommend, one, watching our Clovis documentary, which I'll link down in the description, and then two, really learn the basics of bifacing and working through normal archaic style or even unfluted paleo points before getting into fluted stuff. It's not that fluting, I don't think it's terribly difficult overall. It's the fact that there is a higher failure rate. And I know that some people say, well, no, if you know how to do it, it doesn't work. You don't fail that many times. Well, the archaeological record says differently. And also the amount of points that I've made shows differently, that there is an inherent danger. And if it was super easy and super beneficial, then guess what? People would have still been doing it thousands of years later. But of course they were not. They gave it up. And the reason is because there is a higher failure rate. So we're going to go through not only this piece, but then we're going to do some other ones and skip right ahead of all the bifacing so we can show you specifically different scenarios for fluting and different ways to set them up at different periods of time in the biface, and then also show you those compared to artifacts. So we're going to give you as much information as possible in this video. I have no clue if it's going to be 15 minutes long or 3 hours long. All I know is we're going to give you the most information possible. Now, I'm going to show you this one quick knockout that I did. I specifically made this very lenticular on the biface, and by lenticular it means lenticular is lens-like. So lens means curved, you know, convex. And so especially on this side, you can see the cortex here. It's very lenticular. So typically on these paleo points, you're going to have a side, not always, that's more flat, which this one's still fairly lenticular too, and I did that specifically because we're planning on fluting this side also. So this would be a point where you're gonna make this preform very lenticular on this side, almost running to a ridge. So you can see this one's got a ridge. We're not trying to do any overshot flaking on this. We're actually specifically trying to create not step fractures into there, although we have a couple little ones here, but we're trying to create a ridge running down the center to remove a very long flute. Now, the method I'm using, I'm looking at Clovis. Is there a possibility that we could dress this edge and we could run one to the top like a Cumberland or a Folsom? Well, maybe. And that's another project we're kind of working on too, but we're not quite there yet. So either way, we're creating a ridge, and my guess is somewhere along here is gonna be a very hard hinge and break off of the flute, much like this one here. Okay, so you can see how this one was very lenticular on the top of that, and then we created a platform and we did a huge hinging flute like we see in some of the artifacts. So that's kind of what we're after. And then after we redress this piece, or after we flute this piece, then what we'll do is we'll redress, and I'll show you a little bit of that. We might skip a little bit, we may not. And then we'll go ahead and try to flute this side, and we'll just kind of see what happens. And then if this doesn't flute like we want, we're going to redress it. Every one of these is going to be a little bit different. And the reason is as I probably mentioned in the introduction, that so many different Clovis have different fluting techniques, and we're trying to replicate that really deep hinge flute on one side and possibly on the other side as well. So anyway, all right, hopefully I don't have to explain that again too much, and we're just going to run through it. Now, when I'm setting up my platform, so this is all the super educational stuff, and you're going to get the benefit from all my failures. You can see it's a really sharp beveled platform for driving this. Now if we hit it right on there now, it's so sharp that I can tell you right now it's going to crumble, or it's going to make a very short flute. And so in this scenario, at least what I've learned thus far is if you want that flute to travel, we need to roll crush with a hammerstone on that platform. And I still look at it, even there, I still look at it as it's too pronounced, it's too sharp. So sometimes if you look at casts of these artifacts, they have a really defined nipple that comes out. And while I agree with that, a lot of times those casts that you find that have that super really well defined nipple, the reason you're finding them is because they're actually broken half. And that being said, let me grab one here. Hang tight with me 1 second. I know it's here because I just saw it. Perfect example. And so here's a cast of an artifact that is really well defined on that nipple, right? Okay, really small, which I do think is important to some degree, but this is also, it was broken half during manufacture. Look at the beautiful flute coming off that. That's actually from a Folsom site, but you're still looking at very similar technology. If you study pieces that are broken and then you try to replicate ones that are broken, there's a very good chance you're going to replicate a broken point. And the reason for that I found, at least thus far, is if you really isolate this, just like with blade core technology, and this is why blade core is so important to Clovis or fluted point technology, because if you study the basics of blade core and running these, that's essentially what you're trying to do, is run a blade off of a biface. Okay, so the blade core stuff, which we already did a video on the blade core, and this is just kind of one of the crude preforms. Imagine that this one was stuck here on the side. Okay, and this is totally random, I just grabbed it, but it actually illustrates what I'm talking about. You see how the blade is curved? So every time that you remove one of these, the energy tends to curl. So the further out the platform, you're thinking that you're moving the platform way further out because you want that really isolated platform. Well, the problem is it then starts to curl. So what starts to happen is the energy no longer goes straight down, but it starts to curl. And when it curls, what happens? It curls right through the point and it snaps it off. So removing this as a blade, like in massive fluting, which is basically what we're after, you have to account for the curl of the flute. And if you don't, A, it'll break it in half, or B, if it's a short enough point, maybe you'll actually be able to flute it all the way to the tip with a little bit of curl, which would be good. But basically what we're saying is, if you set this up to remove a blade, expect to break it in half almost every single time if you're not accounting for the curl. Now you could set this up and hit it at a less angle, and then you're going to see a feather out. And a feather out flute is just fine too. You see many of those in artifacts where they're completely feathered out. But the ones that were, and that's not a bad thing per se, but again, if we're shooting for this really deep hinged flute, or hinged flute, especially like we see on, I don't know, what is it, the Sugarloaf site? I'll have to pull the casts out. Well, I think you know what I'll do? I'll go back and in the intro, I'll make sure that I show those that I'm talking about, the ones that are really deeply fluted on both sides. That's kind of what we're after. So because of that, now that was a big explanation, and I know I don't want this super, super sharp. So I'm actually going to grind it backwards the opposite way that we wanted to, because I don't want that super sharp. So now look at the platform we're at now. Now I may still end up blowing this up, but do you see that I took all the concavity out of this side? So if this is the side that the flute's going to be on, I took the concavity out of it, I dolled it up, and this is the first flute, so this one can be a little bit more aggressive because we have a lot of thickness. So we're going to set up and we're going to really try to drive a heavy flute. If we're lucky, it'll hinge. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, and if it won't, we'll redress. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to take a pressure flaker, and right here on the sides of it, we're going to give it a tiny bit of dressing. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. Okay, so a little pressure flake, if it wants to come off, the other side did, there it is, a tiny bit to release the sides. So now when we put right on this platform here, it's really focusing the energy that it's going to come all the way up. Now we can absolutely hit this with percussion, and I've shown that kind of in some of the other videos, especially with the Clovis documentary. But we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do the indirect percussion, but today's big focus is on the jig. Alright, so now this is one of the really important parts of this video. Tons of explanation, obviously, up front, and then we'll get into the actual fluting. But the process of getting to the fluting has been really, really important. So when you look at like Clovis assemblage, one of the things that's really important is the blade core. So we showed the blade core video on Flint Knapping Friday, and still learning that process. And what you're still looking at with blade core is you end up having curled sections, but you also have ends like this that aren't ideal, and we don't need that. Same thing with this side. What we really want is that optimal blade that's right in the middle, just like this, that we can haft in our knives. And so I was, and I still will, I'm not afraid to do it, taking my hammerstone. If you watch that video, I'll cantilever it over and I'll pop it off, right? Well, what I found is it's not necessarily the best method to do it because you can't control where it's going to break quite as easily. So I thought, you know what, I always want to improve my system, so I want to make a nice cantilever to actually snap the ends off, do good bend break snaps so I can create the blades. You go through all the effort of creating the blade, why leave it to chance on hitting it on a hammerstone that's not properly supported? So forget about this a second. Here's a piece of wood, like a wooden sort of jig. I don't remember who this was. Somebody mentioned this, and it was a great idea, and I cannot for the life of me. I want to say it was Jack Crafty, but I don't necessarily think it was. I cannot for the life of me think of who it was that had mentioned cutting a channel in a piece of wood, and for making your Clovis points. So like here's where the flute is, right? That you set it down and you wrap it and then you hit it and then the flute drives into here. And so I tried that with fair success. I had a lot of feathered out flutes. That's how we made some of the ones early on before I started doing freehand indirect percussion. I was using kind of this wooden jig, which doesn't bother me in the least to use that. It's a very easy thing to carry around. But now, long story short on that, but it didn't really give me the results I wanted. Now maybe it's just my technique, because everybody's technique's a little bit different. Anyway, you can see here I had one that I dug out really, really deep. I had one here that was a little more shallow, and it's concave in the center, so the point can actually sit on it. So we're going to go through some deep explanation here in a little bit. But what I did was, when I wanted to make my cantilever for knocking the ends off of my blades for the Clovis assemblage, I was like, well, I'm just going to grab this jig. This looks perfect. And I'm going to break them off. And what I found was I hit and the bounce in the wood, because wood always has flex. Even if it's this short, it's different. It's a different material than something like antler. And what I found was I had a lot of shock and I was breaking the blades. It didn't matter which way I oriented them on this. I was breaking blades in the center because of the shock from the bounce of the wood. And I could feel the difference between using wood versus when I used a hammerstone. When I set a hammerstone on and I just supported it with my hand, I could pop it off, but the shock, it didn't bounce, and therefore I never had one break in the blade when I was using the hammerstone. I just would knock the tips off and that was it. And sometimes it broke here and sometimes it broke here, but I wanted a very accurate break because the hammerstone's rounded, right? So that's why I tried this. And when I did that, I started snapping them in half. And then it was like, bang, light bulb went off. That's why when I put a really aggressive flute on a point, I was snapping my points in half because of the bounce in the piece of wood. So then I thought, I'm not going to make a stone one, but I could easily take a solid piece of antler and just flatten it, and I could use that as my cantilever. And when I wrapped it, even holding them, quite honestly, but then I would wrap them because there's no reason not to wrap them because it's even more secure, I was getting, boom, really nice breaks. Let me do that here for you really quick. But what you also find is there's a little curvature to some of these, and they're all a little bit different. So what I'm doing is I'll take this and I'll wrap this is all very important to the Clovis thing that I'm working on right now. So we wrap this because there's always a little cushion, right? And then right where I want it to break, let's say I want it to break right here. Really I don't, I want it to break back here, but I'm just trying to give you an example. Then I'm going to wrap this, and then at the base I'm going to wrap it around. This piece of leather is not quite long enough, but it'll work. Then when I'm ready to break it, hopefully it works and doesn't make a fool out of me, I'm going to hold it nice and tight, and I got this nice hard cantilever, and boom, right there, broke right where I wanted it to. Perfect, right? Easy peasy. Well, that didn't work with the wood because remember, it kept breaking back in the center. So it, again, not a problem. I can shear these off where I want, make the blade I want. So then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Why can't I use this for my Clovis? And then I thought about, well, when I was looking at the wood, I threw that thing down somewhere and I lost it. I channeled it out because I was trying to remove the flake off the bottom side, which is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when I had the first initial idea with this one, I was like, why can't I take this piece of antler and go ahead and soften the mating surface, but we're still up against a really rigid, and instead of putting the flute down because there's no channel, let's turn where I want it to come off of and up. And that's exactly what I did with this one. And then when I get to the bottom, we're gonna kind of undercut, support that point. What I do need is I need a little bit longer piece of leather, or 2 pieces of leather. And then instead of taking the flute off this side, what I did was I turned the whole thing over, as you're going to see me doing a little bit. And instead of hitting it, even though I can hit it, I used indirect percussion and I got my angle just right. And then I smacked that flute out. So I basically took the same technology. This is what's really important, and I'm hoping you'll wrap your head around it. And if you haven't, please go back like 5-10 minutes and listen to me talk about this again, because I think it's crucially important to this process. Is that instead of channeling it out and removing the flake on this side, and instead of using wood, I'm using something solid like antler, which of course they could have used antler or ivory, and then removing the flake off the other side, and that's what we're really focusing on. But this is the big important part, is when you start drawing or start playing connect the dots on correlating tools correlating tools within complexes or assemblages. So Clovis people had blade core technology, a very strong, prominent blade core. Not the micro blades and stuff like you see in Europe or Asia, but still a blade core like I did in the blade core technology. And if they realized that they could really manipulate what these pieces did by making a hard cantilever and snapping them off, now somebody's light bulb is going to go on the same way that mine did, and they're going to say, if I can manipulate this piece of rock on this hard cantilever, why can't I turn it over and do it the opposite way? Because as you can see, even how I did this and I left that little piece, that's the perfect almost platform. We could knock that little piece, had the angle been a little bit better, we could knock that little piece off and actually thin the blade, because I actually did that with one of these as well. That's the important part. Now it gets even better than that, just when you think this is like Billy Mays, right? But wait, there's more, right? I take my punch that I use when I do the blade core and we knock these long flakes off, and I thought, wow, I could actually use this. But instead of adjusting this punch that I love that much and on a whim, I took another piece of antler and I flattened it. Then you could easily sit and just scrape this piece of antler down. Now what's funny is I could make this, my cantilever, into a punch, do all my blade core on one tool, because these people are nomadic, right? Or nomadic or semi-nomadic. So not every piece of kit matters, but if you can use multiple tools for multiple different jobs, that's pretty important. I could make this into a punch to do the blade core, then take the blades, cantilever it off of one tool, then also use it for a Clovis fluting jig, all in one single tool. That is real innovation. That means something to people that are nomadic and don't want to carry huge bags full of every single tool that they could possibly come up with. They're going to build tools that work, multi-use, and then carry those. Alright, so that's the really important part that I was trying to say. Now that I've got all of that out of my system, and I was able to tell you, now what we're going to do is, see how if you take this, that's why that notch was cut in on the piece of wood, right? So you could set that down in because it's lenticular. But see, remember, we're not doing that. We're doing it the opposite way. We're actually putting the more flat side down. Now, this piece still is not flat, right? So there's going to be a lot of rocking. And I can't wait to tell you what I came up with later on this, but I'm not giving that up yet because I got to try it out a whole bunch. But anyway, a little bit of rocking, that's where the leather comes in. Okay? Man, I hope this sticks with some of you guys because I think this is really, really important stuff. So we're going to wrap the leather around. And remember, the flute's going to go up. And we want it supported up about as close to the tip as possible. So now we'll go ahead and we'll start wrapping this in. I'm hoping I'm not making a mistake. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the camera and I keep saying that the leather's not long enough. I'm going to get another strip of leather and then I'll be right back. Okay, we got the longer piece of leather. I think this is really, really important, and I think you guys are going to love this. Let's get rid of that little one. Okay, the important part, and I want to reiterate this, is that the point needs to be, it needs to be supported. And having this leather gives quite a bit of support to the projectile because it compresses a little bit. Right now, I've heard some theories before, and it works really well, I don't know, about, you know, setting them down in mud or clay or something like that. One of the big issues that I would have is not everywhere has clay, and especially in dry climates, you might be absent of, you know, mud to some degree, where if you can substitute that for leather, which even this, I'm going to take the bottom end, I want to really support that tip. So what we're really just trying to do is we're making a shock absorber, a shock dampener out of the leather, and we're wrapping it tight, like not as maybe as tight as I can absolutely get it, but we've got it pretty darn tight. Now, again, using this as just that solid, that rigid piece that's going to help take the shock out, so we're not going to have the bend or the fold over. I'm going to fold this point in half, hopefully, and then the leather being shock absorbing and holding everything tight. When I hold this and remove this flake, I'm holding it from the top, okay, and I'm squeezing this point. Now, I don't know if holding it over the top like this and squeezing it with my fingers is going to stop the flute, but I'm going to hold it on the sides because I really don't want any of this energy coming out. And remember, I've got it kind of sucked up close here to the end. So that's what we're after. Now, the method in which you use to remove this, I don't think is that important. I think individual nappers had different ideas that they like. There might be somebody that loved to do I would love to see somebody do it. You know who I'd really love to see do it? I still don't know how to pronounce his last name, the Peter Wicking or Viking. I would love to see him do a Clovis and then take an antler punch and put it on it like this and then wrap it and remove that long flute. I'm gonna hit him up. I'm gonna ask him to do it. See if he can hook me up on that. That would be amazing to watch him. He's got the technique down with a punch like this, right? I'm okay with it, but I'm a big under the leg kind of guy. Like, and then you take, which I think is, I think that's actually was brought up. I think that's a Jack Crafty sort of job there. If memory, I don't really watch. I just pick up little things here and there. I'm kind of bad about remembering that stuff. Not gonna lie, but I'm pretty sure that was a Jack Crafty thing, the under the leg, which I love. Marty Reuter doesn't much like that. He loves like a longer shaft that's got a little bounce. That's the point, right? Everybody has something that they really, really love. So you could even do a vertical punch where you hold this with your fingers and hit it, or you might even line this out and hit it with a billet, lap napping, or you might take a little short freehand and hit it. So this is the tough part about all of this, is I don't think that there's, when you look at these Clovis, they have so many different flake scars on all of them. And there's so many different techniques that are going to give you different results. But at the end of the day, if you're fluting it the way you're wanting to flute it, stick with that method and perfect that one method. So that's, give me 1 second here. That's probably the one little piece of advice that I would give is, instead of bouncing around to 15 different things, pick one that seems to work with you, and I'm hoping that this is it for me, and work with it until you perfect that one. Then, if you can replicate one of the types of Clovis or Redstone or Folsom or whatever it is, then I think you're on to something. I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel all the time. You find that one thing. I'm trying to get the best fitment here I can. You find that one thing that really works for you. And notice I'm not using the small end, I'm using the big end. And honestly, I'm still not super stoked. I don't think I want to show you that, and that's why I don't want to rush it. Okay, I think that tip is still too pronounced, and because it's so pronounced, I think I'm going to curl it just like that. So very important yet, right? If you look at those two edges, I'm really looking at that going, that's asking to curl back in. So don't be in a rush. I'm not going to be in a rush. We want to do this right. It's intuition. Obviously, I would have had it fluted 15 times over if I'd have done it. And I know that there's guys watching going, just flute it already. It's about teaching. It's about doing the best job you can. If I just do it and I'm like, cool, look how cool I did this, and I fluted it, you're just going to say, well, all you did was tell us how cool you are because you fluted it, but you didn't teach us how to do it. I'm trying really hard to get it right and then to pass along not only the technique but the philosophies of fluting. So I just wanted to deaden that a little bit. So see how I kind of brought it back up, which is counterintuitive to if you were wanting to make an overshot flake on a point. But remember, if you were trying to raise that platform to do an overshot, this big point to remember, the distance that you're only trying to travel that flake is here. And also remember, if you, let's imagine that this was only this long and it was bifacial. If you hit it here, it would run over and oftentimes curl because it's an overshot flake, right? Very important. Very important. We're going to go back and cover that again. Think about this. Let's ignore the other side. If I was trying to drive a flake across here, did you notice how I will raise the platform? I always say remove off this side, raise the platform, say like this one here, and then we're going to drive a flake. And then when we drive a really good one, what happens is it typically goes all the way across. If not, it goes past center. Well, if it's going to go past center, do you know what it has to do? It has to curl. Okay, so if you raise that platform really high and remove a flake, it can curl an overshot. And that overshot, you have to remember, it's curling because this is a distance of about, probably not quite 2 inches, but very close. 1 3/4 to 1 7/8. Okay, now if you translate that to this side, if we had that really high pronounced, it would travel to what? 1 3/4 or 1 7/8. About like that is. Look at it. Let's look at that size wise. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you guys? The distance. Look at the width of that. Now obviously it's set up like this, right? But this is what I'm talking about. See how this curled and broke that point in half? That's because every one of these long flakes you remove has curl. So if you set up the same type of platform that you were going to use to, say, like do a long overshot, it's going to curl, snap your point in half. Man, I hope you get that. I really hope you get that. I think it's so important. So therefore, we can't set up a super high platform because of the curl and it's going to bite. So what we have to do is actually back the platform off, aim the platform up. So it's going to do one of two things. It's going to A, feather out because we're sending the energy, and it's either going to feather out, and by feather out, it's something like this. You see where it doesn't hinge off, it feathers out, where a hinge would be this side, and a feather would be where it tapers out. So if we take this flake, which is a blade core flake, and let's just set it right on top of here. So look at the curl. If we hit it and it feathered out, that means it gets smaller here and releases off of the top, and that's when you get like a flute, but it doesn't hinge. Because of that, I'm going to have to show you, because, give me 1 second, I'm going to grab something here and show it to you. Hang with me. Okay, I got one good hinge flute, and then I don't have to get a cast off of another one. Give me 1 second here. Really important stuff, right? Okay, here's a cast of one of the Clovis that I did that really feathered. I mean, there's a teeny tiny hinge, but hardly at all. I'll keep rotating around because I know it's plastic and it's white. It's hard to see. You see how it doesn't hinge really hard? Like, it doesn't even grab my flaker. And then you look at this one here. It's got a big hinge, and I can hit that. So this goes in and it hinges. This feathers out. That's what I'm saying, that it's like it comes and it dissipates into midair, where this one dissipates, the energy stops, and it pop hinges. Both of them are correct for Clovis. You see both of these in Clovis all the time. So that's nothing new. So that's what I'm saying here, that if we want to make that hard hinge, then, well, let me go back and rephrase that again. Let's use this flake as an example. If you look at the curvature and we set that on there, it is either A, when we hit it, if we get the angle a little bit like this, if you start tilting it up when you hit it, it's going to feather out because of the angle. And if you lean it down when you hit it, there's a good chance it will hinge. And if you lean it down, that's incorrect. I had it the other way around. Sorry. If you if you lean it down, that's where it's going to hit and it's going to feather out because it's going to peel off. And then if you lean it up, that's where it's going to hinge. And then if you lean it up too hard, that's when you're going to see that the flake curls and goes up through the piece. Okay, you see what I'm talking about there? Look at the angles with this curled flake. So if you hit it really low, it'll curl out. If you raise it up a little bit, it'll hinge. And then if you raise it up the whole way, look at the angles. So think about it like this. Does that make sense to you? So you hit it, it feathers out, it hinges, your point's now broken in half. You see what I'm saying? Okay, I really hope so. And if not, please go back and watch it. Alright, so now, all that being said, let's hit this thing and break this thing in half. Alright, so, okay, now again, we're not hitting it that way, we're hitting it this way. Now we'll see if I like that edge a little bit better. And if it's not, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna take it off because I don't want to break it. Now, that all being said, remember I'm trying to teach, so this is we're taking a tremendous amount of time to do this rather than hitting it. But that preform that I made only took me, I would say, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes to make that preform. So super easy. I didn't spend a ton of time on it. I smacked it out. I got it. So that way, the first flute, if it breaks, I only have 5 or 10 minutes invested. We throw it aside, we're going to make a new one. Now that I've explained the whole process, once we hit it, I don't have to explain every single little process to you again. You're going to go watch the first part again, and then we're going to just grab pieces and keep fluting them and seeing what happens, okay? Nope, same thing, little crap. There, we got it. Alright, see what happened. Let's hope, huh? Alright. So now, I gotta be careful of my choice of words here. If I wasn't such a light hitter, I reckon, I think I could have traveled that flute all the way up. But look at that flute. That's almost halfway. And I think had I had a little better purchase and maybe a little harder hit, I think we would have taken it. But look at that flute. That's a solid flute, okay? Now, all that being said, I'm not going to show you how to redress all of this. I'm going to tell you how, but what we're going to do is we're going to remove a little bit off of this side. Okay, let me explain this to you, but I'm not going to show you through it all because this is going to take, it's a long video as it is, okay? I'm going to remove some flakes off this side, not necessarily into the flute, just enough to raise, I want like a bevel. You know what I'm talking about, like a single bevel? I'm not looking at long flakes. I'm looking at a couple small ones to raise the platform on this side. When I raise the platform on this side, I can thin this a little bit as needed. Then I'm going to chip the back and set up another platform to do the exact same thing, because this side's very lenticular, that I can do the same thing on this side. Now, I'm not saying, this is very important too, I'm not saying that I'm raising the platform to remove massive thinning flakes on this side, okay? That's not what I'm after, okay? I'm going to remove a couple cleanup flakes. I'm going to like bevel this, move the shoulder up, and probably set up a nice lenticular ridge so I can drive a flute on this side. But as of right now, it's a little thicker than I want, which is okay too, because by the time we really clean the piece up, now remember, we're fluting first, then we're going to clean up, flute, and then clean up the rest of the point around it. So now you see what we got here. I'm going to go ahead and redress this, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. You replicate it, you try to, and we'll try to flute the other side and see what happens. But with all the nonsense I just talked about, I think we did pretty darn good with getting a really, really nice hinged first initial flute. So I do have one problem here that I'm worried it's going to hit, maybe two problems. You can see I'm trying to set up a really lenticular face to flute the other side. So we got that flute, and I've narrowed it up, and I've made this side lenticular, okay? And we've created a pretty nice little platform right here. All right, I think we can get a good hit on that. There's a little trash right there I don't like, and I know even if we get this to flute, I'll still have to come back and want to get that out. It's not the end of the world. And then there's another little one here, and honestly, I'm a little bit guilty of rushing through it because I'm still learning some of the fluting stuff. And if you're learning how to flute, let me tell you this right now. If you're really learning how to flute, the best way to get discouraged, and trust me, I know, is to spend an hour on making a perfect point and then go to flute it and snap the dang thing in half. It's just, it sucks, and it's going to discourage you. And anybody that I know that wants to play with Clovis, they'll put a tremendous amount of time into a point, and then they snap it in half and they say, that's it, I'm done with it, I'm over. And I think early people were the same way. I did not spend a tremendous amount of time on this. I spent a tremendous amount talking about how we were going to do it, but that's the practical application side. That's the teaching side, right? Ooh, boy. Let's hope it didn't break. Look at that. All right, we're going to find out. Did we snap it or did we flute it? Come on. No breaks yet. Looky there. I tell you what, that's not too awful bad. I kind of wish we had a little bit more, but I tell you what, we got a heck of a flute on that, didn't we? Okay, well, we spent about 15 minutes making a little better preform. So you can see we have a little less problems on this one. And I already set up the back, ready to flute. Got a nice hit. Look at that. See if we didn't flute it and break it in half, huh? Like I said, I'm still learning. I'm learning like you guys are. Let's see, did it break it? Maybe. Maybe not. Come on. Woo! It's a nice little one. Wasn't the best flute ever, but it's long and skinny. Went up to about the mid range. We did the proper amount of effing around, so we're fixing to find out. So we got that first initial flute. Still have it. It's kind of subtle, but I mean you can see it. And actually, it's gone up pretty far and hinged. And by the time we dress this up, it's about halfway up that face. It's pretty nice. And then this side, we spent a little bit more time, made a nice little preform. I'm feeling a little bit more confident. I'll tell you what, that's either really good or it's really bad. And we're ficking to find out. Come on, baby, be in one piece. Please be in one piece. No, I broke it. And it was beautiful, too. Look at that. Man, I was worried about it. That would have been good, wouldn't it? That would have finished us out on a really nice flute. That's brutal. But that I was really worried about, that we had that slight curl in that concavity. And I'll tell you what, I think my angle was just a little bit off. But I'll tell you what, when you look at the manufacturer sites, a lot of them broke, and you have to remember that. So we had a nice flute on that side, and then that one broke. And I'll tell you what, look at that right there. That's the cast, and that's the one I just did. We'll do it one more time. Another about a 15-minute. We got some really nice flakes on that one. I'd hate to fold that one in half. We had some really nice, almost overshot on some of these. Really close. Great thinning flakes. But then I set up the platform here and isolated it out again, back a little bit so we don't have too much curl. I'm going to line out to, it's not super thick, it's not super thin. I'm kind of going for a hinge up here somewhere. Oh, it broke. It went. Let's see what happened. It's really tight in there. I don't even think y'all can see the break. I tell you what, it gets aggravating at times. Hope we didn't fold this thing in half. Oh man. Oh guys. Alright, are you ready? It didn't break in half, I can tell you that much. Look at that. Come on, we're gonna see it together. Now that, that's a flute right there. And it's not too thick. That is a nice start. I'm gonna take my time. I put 15 minutes into the preform. We got a beautiful flute to start. Some of these beautiful, long paleo flakes. I'm going to shut the camera off and I'm going to spend my time dressing this one up. And then we're going to address the backside when we get there. Alright, we're fixing to regret this. So we clean that up. It's a pretty nice looking flute right there. It's actually starting to resemble a little bit more of a Folsom, except for the fact that it didn't travel all the way. But not near far off it anyway. And we're still learning. So anyway, it doesn't need to be thinned. It's plenty thin enough, but this is a fluting exercise, not a that's good enough exercise, right? So we're already very thin. We're going to learn something from it one way or another. We either fluted, I'm going to show you now because that might be the best that it ever gets. We fluted the crap out of it, and I'm afraid that it's in multiple pieces. And I'll tell you what, that's the name of the game. It's in one piece, ladies and gentlemen. It is in one piece. Now how far did it go? Because I can push on the tip. and the back moves. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's in one piece. Come on, baby. Holy crap. All right. Well, that's the flute we just did. That's the other flute. I think we're really getting close to figuring it out. And I'll tell you what, I haven't blown up many. Actually, the last one that you watched is the only one I've blown up so far. The other ones just haven't done what I wanted them to do. That was thin. It fluted really nicely. And it's because, I almost guarantee you, it's because we're using this rigid bend break for the blade core. And that is what's giving us the best purchase on this. Okay, now I'm set up really good. Look at that flute. That's almost halfway. Hinge broke. That one's up halfway. Hinge broke. This is probably set up to be the best Clovis I've ever done. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this one out. And I have no doubt that this one will finish out because it's already 90% there. We'll finish it out and we'll show it to you. Well, this is how I know that we're getting awfully close to it, because not only are we doing some really nice flutes, but we're starting to get a little bit Folsom-esque, all with indigenous or aboriginal tools. And this would be a long Folsom point anyway. Folsom would probably only be up to about there. Overall size-wise about 2 inches long. So we got these flakes. If we could get those flutes just a little bit further, which I think we can do with some practice, and then round that nose a little bit shorter, I think we're getting really close. Especially when you look at the base, it's getting really close. Really thin knife edge, and it was all done with aboriginal or indigenous tools and an antler cantilever. That's all it is. And I think with a little bit more practice, we're gonna be there. So that may be right there. That may be the transition between Clovis and Folsom. Okay, I got another preform, just kind of a small preform worked out. I got our platform set up back here, again, kind of to account for the curl. Again, kind of a nice little opportunity. We'll see if we can't get anything out of this one. Would like to see if we can't get another really nice hinge flute for you. That was a big bite. I bet you I overblew that one. I was trying to get so aggressive. I either got a wonderful flute or I snapped it in half and overshot it. It sounded intense. Let's see what it did. Well, it survived. Let's see. Got a couple pieces out of it. Yeah, I was worried about that one. Holy smokes, that's a nice flute. One more little fingernail piece right there I can probably get off later. But that's a really nice flute, and traveled up here a pretty good long way, and I'm sure that this last little fingernail hinge that's hanging on, it'll probably pop off as we work this point out. Alright, so here we're caught up to speed, and that was our original flute. You can see it goes up to here, so about halfway up, and kind of did mostly that unifacial design where this face is pretty much finished out. It could use a little bit of cleanup, but that last little cleanup is fine. We're really lenticular on this side, which is set up to hopefully run a pretty significant flute. The downside is we do have a dip right here, and so I'm a little concerned. I don't know that we're going to be able to get this to go that far anyway. I mean, if we make it up to here, up to halfway or over halfway, that's really good. I'm also kind of setting it up, as you can see, almost more Folsom-like. My philosophy on this really is, if I can strive for getting closer to Folsom, then Clovis is going to be a lot better, and I'm going to learn a lot more. So it's like I'm really, for lack of a better term, kind of going for broke, if you know what I mean. And I'm okay if I break it because I still know I'm going to learn. Boy, we hit it good. Let's see. You can see it there? We got a good flute, but it might be in pieces. I either hear the flute rattling around, we're fixing to collect data, that's for sure. Did we break it? Nope, we did not, but the flute failed. Well, it didn't fail, it just didn't do what we wanted. I didn't get a big enough bite on it. But, I mean, that's still a nice little flute. Alright, now we're going to go a different direction on this one. Alright, we're just working on fluting exercises, so I chipped it down, so we still have our first initial flute, which is now doesn't quite go up halfway. It would if we knocked that off, but that's fine. I set it up, I chipped it back. I just want more reps, and we're going to keep learning. Alright, got a good hit on it. See if it did us any good this time. Hopefully we just got one more good rep out of that one. Got a little bit of experience. Yep, alright, that was decent. Still not absolutely gorgeous, but it ran all the way up to there, so it's still another successful rep on the cantilever. Alright, well I took a little break to kind of reset my mind a little bit and did some other work, and then came back. And we have another preform, a little bit bigger size one this time, and we're gonna have some fun with it. So I already got a nice little platform set up, just a flute. Really spent a little bit of time just making sure I felt really good about it. And then I also took a little bit of extra time to sit down and grind all the divots out of my indirect stick. It's really starting to get worn down. I mean, this thing used to be about, I bet you about that long, but I ground all the divots out of it, and I think that that's going to make a big difference as well. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up, and boy, that really fills up the length of my antler. But luckily I think we're going to be in okay shape because it doesn't look like I'm going to have any hanging over. It's a good hit. We'll see if it did anything. I actually split the flute into two pieces. You can see that. Let's see if it did us any good, or if my angles are still off, or if I broke the point, or what. I have no idea. Not too bad. Not phenomenal, but not bad either. Okay, so it actually kind of split that flute out and then ran it up to that side right there. See, that's not the end of the world to me, because this to me is extra wide. I don't need it this wide. So now we have a nice starting flute that goes about halfway up. Well, that's a pretty long flute. So what I'll probably do is I'm going to go ahead and work this point, clean it up. I'll be able to clean up that tip, and then hopefully we'll see how I feel. If I want to cheat the whole thing over and basically build it over here, or if I want to go ahead and just flute the other side. I guess you'll find out here in a few minutes. But either way, another win. I mean, that's a pretty substantial flute. Another win for that antler. Alright, so that last one was good, right? But we're collecting fluting data. So I dressed it up. I actually think we may even reflute this side by the time we get a little bit closer. What I really want is a nice deep hinge flute, and that's why I don't mind fluting early and then going back and refluting multiple times. So, boy, we hit that one good. I'm curious to see what that one looks like. I got aggressive with it. We'll see if it was too aggressive. It might have been. It might have been. I'll tell you what, these things take unbelievable how much abuse that point can take when it's wrapped up like that. So again, another nice flute, but it stopped. It terminated on us. I was being pretty aggressive with it, but it hit just a little bit of a low spot in here. Hit that little bit of a low spot, and that's where it terminated. That's a bummer, isn't it? There's no reason that I shouldn't have been able to really punch that up into about here. I mean, it's still a nice little flute, don't get me wrong, and the point sure took some abuse, but let's just keep working it out. That was a crappy little one. I think I skipped right off the top and ruined my platform. Yep, just a little baby flute right there. Okay, that was a nice hit. Let's see if it did anything good. Let's see if it survived. Love all this fluting data. Alright, and that's another pretty good one. That's pretty far up. That's nice, about halfway. Another really nice flute scar. So we'll go ahead and we'll clean this one up and we'll give it a try. So another good success. Boy, I hope that one worked, guys, because I'm excited about this one and I felt really good about it. Y'all see what the end of that looks like. I hope this one held because I'm excited about this one. If it broke if it broke, it's only the second one we've broken. Otherwise we're only at one. Did we make it? And what had happened? Oh, we folded it. Oh no. We did. I was so excited for that one. Oh. Well, I tell you what, we would have had it too. That would have been a beauty there and a beauty there. We would have had it. All right, we got another preform here, pretty much like the rest, and just continuing to visit this and see what we can come up with. Pretty good hit. We had a nice little lenticular biface. Let's see if it did anything good. Yeah, we got pretty good distance. Let's see overall. Oh, that's very nice. That's so far. Let's see. Okay, I broke the flute into two pieces. Very nice. Overall, had a nice, tell you what, as far as hinge fluting goes, it really doesn't get a whole lot better than that. That's a really nice one. Boy, that's a win. So I took a break. As you can see, I'm even dressed differently here. I'll set those fluting. There's channel flute flakes aside. I took a break for about a week. I just wanted to give my leg a chance to heal. I had a nice bruise where I kept kind of hitting it, and just came back today and decided I'm going to go ahead and work on another one. And so I came at it with a fresh mind, which is really important for those that are flint napping. If you really get what I call napper's fatigue, that you can't concentrate on the piece you're doing and you just make more and more and more and more and more mistakes, and that's no different than what I really call archer's fatigue, where you go out and you shoot so much that you just continue to make mistakes. So I came today with a very fresh start, and I made a lenticular biface, nothing terribly fancy. Okay, you can even see from this side, fairly lenticular. And lined out today. Really took time on the platform, made sure it was right, and as you can see, we knocked a heck of a flute. And actually, size-wise, if you actually put a Folsom on here, that would be within the range of Folsom fluting, which is relatively about that length right there. And our goal, again, is kind of to start working on Folsom fluting, but by doing that, we're going to start making our Clovis fluting so much better. And I tell you what, that's a heck of a flute right there. So what we'll do is I'm going to take my time and redress this side, and then we'll get up another platform and we'll see if we can't replicate that same result on the other side as well. But alright, well, I think we did pretty good at setting this one up. So clean these edges up, which of course it'll all shrink in if we flute the other side. And then I made this side a lot more lenticular, and then isolated this platform just like we did on this side. And you have to remember that when we do this side is typically a little bit more flat. So we remove a little bit of cleanup here into the flute, but then we turn it over, typically taking more pressure flakes to kind of make this more lenticular. And so that's how we set that up, as you can see there, to really isolate, hopefully, a flute running up to about here, give or take. I would say it kind of gets a little concave right there. And if that finishes out, that would put us at a flute very similar to this side. And if we get a really good bite, it could actually go up past it. And then if something happens where we make a mistake and feather out, we could stop it short. But either way, we still are set up for a really, really good fluting opportunity. All right, we got a heck of a flute. Let's just hope. Did we blow it up? Or did we make it? Alright, let's have a look. I'm hopeful. Oh, I hear a lot of crumbling, so I'm worried I blew it up. I don't think I broke it. No, I did not. Alright, we didn't get as much as we wanted. I'll tell you what, coming back to it, that's another really nice flute. It is short, not gonna lie. But as far as Clovis is concerned, most Clovis don't go this far up. Most Clovis, like even good Clovis, go a third of the way up. We were again shooting for something a little bit closer to maybe Folsom-ish, which of course you start getting good Folsom stuff going on and makes your Clovis really, really nice. So either way, still learning, still figuring it out. The beautiful flute on that side. This one here, really nice flute, and that's quite sharp right there. Once we clean this edge up, that's going to be a really nice thin hafting surface. Alright, so I kind of just rough finished it out. I haven't ground the hafting area or anything like that. So very significant fluting on this side. As you can see, it's a little overdone for Clovis. And then this side, it's not bad. I mean, it's a third of the way up, maybe even a little bit more than that. So it's not too bad. It's got a feather out. So we very much see that in artifacts as well, to where, you know, you get asymmetrical flutes, some shorter or longer than the other. And honestly, we could half this thing up, go throw it into something. As far as I'm concerned, with a little bit of dress up, I think we're done. However, much like we've done throughout how much of this project so far, I don't care that much about the finished product. I care about the fluting. This side, we've got this great hinge flute. We had that hinge flute, it was a shorter one, but we had a hinge flute here, and by the time I actually thinned the point out, we actually got rid of the hinge and actually deleted just a little bit of the flute, not a whole lot. What I want to do, and we're probably going to ruin the point doing it, and that's okay, is I'm going to go ahead and chip this point a little bit shorter, maybe up to here. Still a very nice hinge fluted on that. But I want to create a new platform. I want to see if we can't get another flute. Hey, we break it, we break it. But hey, right now it's done, right? We could finish it up. We could grind the hafting area. We could sharpen the distal end, and we could go chunk this into something. But we're learning as much about fluting as we possibly can. And we already are successful. Why not go a little bit more just to see, can we flute it better? And if we don't, then everybody can say, ah, man, you're such an idiot. But I look at it going, it's not that exciting to me. Really nice on this side. If we got another really nice one on that side, I would feel a lot more excitable about it. But at the same time, it's a heck of a win already. But I'm going to redress this, shorten it up, create a new platform. I'm going to hit it again. We're going to see what happens. Shortened up a little bit, and I made a new platform. You can still see there's a little bit of the original flute left. Okay, got that in there. Like I said, probably crazy to try to, I mean, it's very, very thin. Crazy overall to probably try to flute it again anyway, but If I do it, I'll be a hero, and if I don't, then I say, I try, and I messed it up. And that's okay. I think we already had a win, but we're just trying to collect as much data as we can. And honestly, the best way to collect data and experience is to not give up when it's good enough, but keep going until it's exactly what you want. Huh, didn't go. I was surprised at that. That's a good platform. No, I think I got a teeny tiny flute off of it. Okay, I drove it forward. I'll tell you what. I drove this thing forward, didn't even flute it. See if it broke. I mean, those hits on it were hard, and we still didn't break it. So, I mean, if you would have hit it like that without supporting it, it would have absolutely broken that point. I 100% guarantee every time. So this whole method of wrapping this on a solid piece of antler and tight, and I'm really stabilizing this, has shown a tremendous amount of merit. And all it really comes down to is execution on the platform and the hit. And obviously that's a point. If I was doing my job perfectly, I think we'd have it sorted out. The difference is I'm still learning all of these specific angles. Oh, we got a good one. Pretty decent flute right there. You can see it. Let's see what happened. I mean, if it breaks, right? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. No, I don't want to show it to you. Guys, we done sorted it out. That flute that came off. Look at this. Come on, guys. Look at that. Holy cow, guys. Beautiful hinge flutes. And it's because we pushed the extra distance. We said it's not good enough until it's good enough. There's our channel flute. We'll set that aside. The other one went down there somewhere. Archaeologists always tell me to save those, but none of them have ever asked for them. That's funny. Guys, look at that. You've seen the abuse that this thing takes, and that we're able to flute this well. I'm gonna hit pause on this thing, because I can finish this point out into a Clovis, and we will. But I'm gonna hit pause, and I'm gonna go get one of the Folsom casts, and we're gonna hold it up. Alright, this is what I wanted to show you. Try to flip it around here so you guys can see it. This is a cast of a Folsom. This is a cast of a Folsom. Relatively small comparative to the Clovis. If you look at the flute scar distance between this one that I just did and this one, very comparable. This one, same deal. You could literally lay that just about in that same. Now this side on this cast of this artifact was actually a failed flute, but it's still a Folsom. This one, same deal, same thing. If we flip that over, look at exactly that, almost identically that same flute scar. Look how powerful this is. Okay, cast of an artifact. All we would have to do, very thin sections here, okay, that we could take and actually chip this Clovis down until it basically becomes this Folsom. And why else this is really important, allow me to get the cast of this to show you. Okay, so this is the other thing I really wanted to show you. This is, and I've shown you this before, this is a Folsom preform that failed in manufacture. Look at the size difference here, okay? But the flute channel, as you could see, would have been right in the same parameters once it's filled in, okay, to that cast. It's pretty common. Your Folsom preforms are rather large, like Clovis, and you could see that it broke on that initial fluting, which would have created a point slightly larger than this one, which is what we started with. If you rewind and look, this would have been that initial flute, which is this size, which was a little bit larger, and then we worked it down, and then we fluted this side. Now, Folsom in general, we'd clean this whole point up and probably make a longer Folsom that's not fully fluted to the tip. After time in use, if it survives use, it will continue to be chipped down, and we could easily turn that into a Folsom. That is a project that we're absolutely working on. And as far as the thickness is concerned, boy, we are not far off. Not far off at all. Do I think I have Folsom figured out? Nope, I don't. But I tell you what, I think we're getting really close. So look at that piece there. I'm going to finish this one out, but as you can see, it's pretty much already done. All I'm going to do is grind the edges, clean it up. Those are two beautiful antler indirect percussion flutes, and now we've made two really, really nice, heavily hinge fluted Clovis points with nothing but that antler cantilever jig, and then also the which is based on, again, on the blade core technology, which is, I think, is crucially important to the success of Clovis because they work at the same time. And then also using the indirect percussion method, and we're replicating these really hard hinge flutes that you see on some of the more finer Clovis points. And then without a doubt, these distances of flute scars. Now, if you remember, this one started out to here. This one was way back here when we started, remember? And then I redressed to hit this one. Had I got that first initial flute to go that far, we would 100% have a Folsom on our hands once we chip it down. So I think we're really, really on to it at this point.